This episode is sponsored by William R. Young.
Well, when you have it, this is a very challenging question, and it's an excellent question to ask. I don't know what the numbers were. It was like there's a large percentage of people, I don't know if it's 5 or 10%, that are battling depression at any one time, and then maybe 20%. Again, don't quote me on those numbers. I'm just saying it's like 20 or 30% of people are always struggling mentally with something. And when you're poor or you're having financial problems, you're always in a recession.
Welcome, everybody, back to another exciting show of the About That Water podcast, where we help the sandwich generation build strong financial habits so that they can spend money, talk about money, and enjoy their money with confidence. And today I have an awesome person who loves the wave, loves to actually pour into people and actually help them thrive in their financial lifestyle. And his name is Will, who is a CFP APMA at Liberty Wealth Management of the Ameriprise Financial Services LLC. So how you doing today, sir?
Great. I'm phenomenal. I know it's a weird day to say that, but I feel phenomenal. I'm in really the best mental strength and health, so to speak, and financially, emotionally, and mentally. You need all of that to be healthy and physically. So I thank you for asking. I know
Yeah,
it's a lot of trauma, though, in the market right now.
that is true. And one of the things that I kind of keep in mind is that putting a smile on your face is optional, because that's one of the things that a lot of people tend to forget, that, happiness is a choice. And how do we deal with that? And well, because you focus on the waves of the market and also the waves of our emotion, what are the one of the ways that people can kind of stay a little level when things become turmoil under them?
I can tell you what really led me on this journey to figure out, like, how can I have the emotional stability? You're well aware there's a million pieces of information coming at you at one time, and it's overwhelming. But that's always been the case. It was just different ways in the past. And I decided that I was going to get up in the morning, and instead of just going right to the gym, I was going to dedicate 40 minutes of walking and then do listening to four different audiobooks, 10 minutes apiece. I walk the dogs, and I devote meditations to things outside of my normal daily stuff and feed my mind with this information. And if it was good information, I would then add it to a collection of notes and then meditate on those so that I could improve. And I actually found something called brain pickings. She's been writing a long time, Maria Popova, and she led me to Tim Ferriss, who then, and I know this is long, but it's very important. He made a audiobook of all of Seneca's writings in Stoicism, and I just started listening, and they resonated with me. It was like, and they talked about people back then. There was over 300 Colosseums in ancient Rome. People always think of one, but there was over 300. They used that to keep citizens distracted. And Seneca was walking back, and he goes, this is distractions that keeps people from really getting to know themselves. So I dedicated this time to study myself and learn to block things out. You must block things out to work on yourself. And that's really what started with my personal growth about 17 years ago, roughly. And it's been every single day. That little chunk of time allows me to say, I'm not going to listen to this. I've gotten my fill of information today. I'll wait till tomorrow.
So what happened 17 years ago where that caused you to start looking at life a little differently?
I'm on the spectrum, and one of the problems when you're on it is if someone says something that isn't true and you're just 100% logic, you can't read them right. You're like, that doesn't make any sense. But that can be very confrontational, which is a problem. And I was like, why would someone tell me butter's made of peanut butter? Like, it just, to me, that's how I saw it. Like, that's when someone says something, to you directly, and it's in the market related, you have all these biases. And I couldn't understand it. So I said, I need to figure out one, how to have mental fitness, mental stability. Stoicism resonated with me. I found it purely on luck through Tim Ferriss. And, I learned there's three parts to it. And the first part is virtue excellence and the dichotomy of control. Now, you hear lots of books since then, such as Viktor Frankl wrote about it. And you said it right at the beginning. And I appreciate that. You control your attitude and smile. Keep saying it, keep saying it, keep saying. And that's essentially said, control what you can control. And then don't allow things outside your force to upset you. Yes, you can be concerned. Yes. And so once I dedicated that 40 minutes in the morning, because it's peaceful. So I get up at 4. And when I'm walking, I do it even when it's cold, even when it's raining. The dogs, I have rain jackets for the dogs. They look great. They're very fashionable.
Nice, nice.
I got the North Face or Dog Face, it's called. So we get out there, and we walk, and it's solitude. There's nothing out there. It's dark. It's quiet. Everyone needs time to themselves, whether you're a mother, father, or you're busy. You're dedicating to improving the mind, which is a gymnasium that must be worked out. And once you do that, and they just start getting into the marrow of your bones, you change. And that's essentially what happened. It took time because I would read it over and over again. And I'm not smart, I'm just disciplined. And I think discipline is more important than talent, because you've never heard someone say, well, that let me say this correct. You've always heard people say that he's talented, but he didn't accomplish what he should have. But when you said somebody's determined, they accomplish what they want.
Yeah.
So determination and discipline are more important than talent.
And one of the things that I come across a lot of people say like certain people are lucky to get to where they are. And I was thinking, actually, I heard somebody talk about this on another podcast, was saying is that people, their success is chosen by somebody else, meaning there's somebody who always is better than you in these different aspects. Either they can run faster, they can read faster, they understand math faster, or whatever it is. But it had to be somebody on the opposite end that had the opportunity to say, I want you to be on my team, or I want you to succeed. I want to give you this amount of money to reach your goal. And it kind of creeps in that imposter syndrome of why me in their finances or in their life. And how do they kind of navigate that mindset of that, like, it's okay to be chosen out of the rest?
Well, I think your question about chosen, there's multiple layers to that. The first part is you have to figure out what is your personal goals. A lot of times we wake up in the morning and we go to work, but we haven't written down what our goals are. What do we want to accomplish? That is very important. And I know the younger version of me is now dead in the morgue, so to speak. But I write my goals down. It's so important to write, to journal, even if it's a little bit like, I got up, struggled today, I cheated on my diet, I didn't want to do that, because we're all human. And putting out your failures are just part of helping you attain your goals. But you have to write your goals and figure out, like, where do I want to be? And it's really hard to do in your 20s because you're like having fun. You have all this energy and you're not necessarily married with kids yet.
Right.
But we all remember that in our 20s, it was very easy. You wake up, you're not tired. You went out the night before, you get up, you're like, what are we doing tonight?
Right.
You're always running around, you know. But when I start to talk to people and when I meet people, regardless if they're working with me or not, I say, let's figure out your goals. You write a plan. And a lot of people are like, I'm too young to work. I'm like, we need to figure out, is it a home in 2 years you need? Do you need a car? And people are like, I've always wanted this. I'm like, maybe that's something, let's get your needs done first and figure out your wants and then your dreams. So if you break things down like that, my dream is I want to be surfing and have a place in say Costa Rica and work from there a lot because I enjoy floating in the water. And when you're in the water, there's a peace. So I know what my goals are, and it's really tranquility in a world that seems so. And I tell clients that, and I share mine. I think important when we're having this conversation is you share your goals, and you ask what others are seeking. And really, when they know what you're trying to do, you get a real sync up with somebody because they're like, oh, okay. And I think that's where comfort comes in. So, but initially, it starts on your own and writing down your goals. And then once you write down your goals, you want to work with an advisor who does financial planning 100%. And I think it's going to be more important than ever because the news is just too overwhelming. And I had a lot of conversations yesterday and Thursday, but I had planned for this. So I had been effectively forecasting them for their goals. Like there's going to be things, these are going to be our goals. And I think clients like to know that I know their goals, but then also we can see that they wrote them down and we're like, hey, we're in line, we're a little ahead of where we expected. And we're just so there's multiple layers to the goal setting. But I set goals not just in the year, but when they come to me and when I'm walking, which is what you kind of ask, I'm sometimes thinking, and I've had an idea in my head, and I'm like, oh, and then you can write it down on your phone, and now you have a goal. So you write down those goals, everybody, when they come to you. You can always change what your goal is at any time. So
And it goes back to controlling the controllables,
yes, correct.
right? And because we were talking offline before, when the market is down, you had a goal of to make 100,000. Now that the market is down, you have a goal of 200,000. You want to lean into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so that I try to have a little humor. There's some funny things on Twitter or other places, and there's a fake account called Not Jerome Powell, and it's pretty funny. And it goes, my goal was to make 100,000. Now it's 200,000 for the year. It's because you have people that are trying to chase something and they try to make money too fast. We've human nature, and this is why Stoicism, or going back to Seneca or Marcus Aurelius or Zeno or Cleanthes, everybody's always tried to make a quick buck. It's human nature to do that. Maybe it took a little longer than, but they wanted it quicker than everybody else. That's how we've always been wired. And there's some really great stories in the late 1800s in the U.S. They had bucket shops, which were fake New York Stock Exchange trading places where you could literally gamble and stuff. So there's all kinds of. We've always done it, and it was just a tape ticker coming out and stuff like that. And they did it over the Western Union wire. So people were always trying to make a quick buck, but you can't successfully over time do that. You can kind of get lucky. But with investors, I try to share what is our goal. And then if we get an opportunity, and this is where I talk about strategic investing, I tell them, let's be patient. There's going to be events that happen. So we always have some cash. So right now, even if you are my most aggressive person, I have you in 30% cash, which looks, I know it looks brilliant right now. And that's
Yes.
why I'm not stressed. But there are going to be opportunities because I told them earnings season's coming. Walmart might say something funny. Google, and I'm not recommending, I'm just saying Apple might say something and Apple drops 20%. There's always these things that are coming up. And again, there are so many unknown unknowns ahead that your attitude is like, I'm going to work with somebody. I'm going to find somebody. I'm going to be patient and wait. And that patience boils down to stoicism or some type of philosophy where it's going to come. And I told my father, Dad, I'm excited. There's going to be things coming. And I tell my clients that, and they hear my attitude and they're like, why are you so positive? I said, because we have this money setting. I'm not going to sell Amazon. A year from now, Amazon's going to be okay. I'm pretty sure. And I'm pretty sure Walmart will be in business. And I'm pretty sure about certain things. But having the right attitude and knowing I got some money and I'm not leveraged means that people can go into this thinking, I know I'm down, my portfolio doesn't look good, but we're going to look at things because all year long there's going to we don't know what's going to happen, but we know there's going to be I know there's going to be some craziness. And I think they feel really good about that because we have a plan. And, I haven't been, I'm not positive on the people running things, but I know I'm positive on there will be positives ahead to
Yeah.
look forward to. So I think the mentality of that is very important.
So you mentioned the mental side of the house, especially in the time of need right now, as far as people just kind of they need answers. They trying to look for a way forward. Would you recommend therapy first before seeing a CPA or a CFP such as yourself?
Well, when you have this is a very challenging question, and it's an excellent question to ask. I don't know what the numbers were. It was like there's a large percentage of people, I don't know if it's 5 or 10%, that are battling depression at any one time, and then maybe 20%. Again, don't quote me on those numbers. I'm just saying it's like 20 or 30% of people are always struggling mentally with something. And when you're poor or you're having financial problems, you're always in a recession, and that weighs on you too. I don't I can't necessarily tell someone what they need, but I have went through therapy. And I am now in something called The Social Edge by Blake Eastman, that we're going through human emotions and behaviors that I'm always in. I'm always getting coached myself, even if I'm a coach across the board, because I need to get motivation and see things. And if I'm wrong, I need to be told and held accountable. So I'm doing that type of stuff as well. So I would say you could use a therapist. You might have some type of coach. It doesn't mean the coach you find is good, but try to get things outside of your normal peripheral, because the mistake we often make is we're just connecting with people in our little social circle. Go outside of that safety zone and find somebody, whether it's and talk to them and then figure out if they're working, because you'll start to uncover and unpack all those things. I don't know if that's a licensed therapist, which it may be, or it might be a great coach, but that's how you develop the inner citadel, by figuring out who you are. And that is powerful. So, yeah, I definitely recommend going across and talking to different people, coaches. And I cast a wide net. I wound up talking to like 12 or 13 different people. And then I found two that I liked. And because my personality can be quiet or it can be very boisterous. It just depends on the person I'm interacting with, so to speak. And
Yeah, I was sorry.
no, 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 please. No,
Because I was
that's a great question. Wow.
yeah, because I'm thinking of again, we mentioning finding your peace, and I think a lot of the times we forget that plants grow the fastest when it's the most quietest. And when you got all the noise, and if you ever notice when there's a lot of foot traffic on grass, the grass doesn't grow in there because the environment is too volatile for it to even
Yes.
thrive. So when it's left alone and it's quiet, they can do that thing. And usually everybody was like, man, you growing like a weed. But when you think about it, the weeds only grow when you're not looking. Every time you look at it, it's just look like it's there, but it's just a moment in time. As soon as that sun goes down, it's sprouting up again. So it's going back to like how you said, that reset that's necessary that we all have to have, and finding that quiet in the noise. And like you said, like 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm trying at 4.
Yeah. Um, Now, what you said, and I love the garden metaphor, the plant metaphor. You need darkness for the plants to grow. Yes, they need light during the day for photosynthesis, but any great garden also needs you to go in and pick out the weeds. So that's why you need to be inside your head. If you want to have a wonderful garden, you got to go and you got to water that. And that is going and getting the knowledge in, and then the knowledge to pull out the weeds and the bad habits. The garden metaphor is perfect, because and then you go through seasons of change. Some bloom at certain times, and that's why you need to be inside your head and pick out the weeds. And you need your sleep. That is, the plants can't grow if it's just sunlight all day. They need, and that's essentially the cycle of sleep well. And if and so there's a lot of pieces to that. But I love the way you use that. You need quiet time so you can grow. Plants can't grow if they're walked on all day. That's exactly it.
I got plenty of plant metaphors there.
Okay, good. No, it's true because we're very much like that, and we're at our best at certain times.
Mhm.
And certain times, in the morning, the sunlight might be better for certain plants, and whatever the case, or certain temperatures. But I like palm trees. I have a ton of palm trees in my house, and
Nice.
they like warm weather, and I do too. I don't like this cold weather. So yeah,
Right. But it goes back to where you're talking about finding your tribe, finding your community, because if you notice, only certain plants can grow in certain climates. Not all plants are welcome in that particular climate. Like I can't grow an orange tree in the Arctic. Like it's just not going to happen no matter how many times I try. It's, I'm saying, like I got tons of metaphors with this because
that's funny.
it's fun.
But it is true. It's absolutely true. You need to find your community. And nowadays, I'm finding people through different social circles. Like I'm talking to someone in LA. In this group, I had someone who's a pianist who trains
Oh, nice.
people. And I forgot the name of the big school in the New York. And then I'm talking to somebody who grew up in a little farming community in Israel, now lives in California. And I've found my tribe, and they're all over the place. And I did international internship program with students for about 10 years. And
Mhm.
so I've connected with certain students on a higher level. One of them, Rule, he's born in the Netherlands, but he's living in England. And so I have this connection. And as I went surfing, that's really brought me out to be me because I have friends that I can talk to. I was sending someone a TikTok in Berlin. She goes, "Bill, I don't use TikTok." I'm like, "You're the younger generation. I'm the older one." And that community is helpful because you can also communicate with them on a deep. So you don't necessarily just to have them in front of you. And you're right about that. That's very, very powerful. Thank you for saying that, getting your
Oh,
community correct.
yeah. And one of the words that I try to change the terminology against it, which is poor versus broke, where broke is a temporary. It is something that you're in the moment of, and poor is more so focusing on the mindset. Because, like you said earlier, if you're in that poor mindset, yes, everything's going to feel like it's always against you. You're not going to see those opportunities of growth through that shine. But if you just understand like, hey, this is just a temporary moment in life where you at, then you can always try to find that opportunity and look at the things that you can control. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's well said. And there's a bias called learned helplessness,
Mm.
where people often are surrounded by other people that keep them in that area where they feel like they're helpless. They have no control. And that's not their fault because they were maybe born into it or wound up in that. And I think the effect of it's called the Pygmalion effect, where people are telling you you're not good and you can have that does affect us. And I realize that when you're in those, it's really hard to break free. That's why obviously you have people who aren't that smart, but who were born with wealth have so many advantages or white privilege or whatever the case you have these, but we all psychologically have to try to find that. And I hope your podcast and we can reach people and let them know, regardless if we were in a better situation or not, the attitude and what you can control is you. And that is, it may be hard because you've had a mindset that isn't growth minded because you've had too many people destroying your plants, your growth and putting you down, but you got to get away from them. And that can be hard because that's all you've known. But that is the single most thing. First, you come first. It's not that you're selfish, it's that if you don't water your own plants, if you don't grow your mind and work your mind out and your body, you're not going to be healthy to do anything great that you want in life. And that's really where it starts. And then you can start saving money. You can start figuring things out, having healthy relationships, which are all part of the behavioral psychology of money. Healthy relationships allow you to not be taken advantage of, stuff like that.
And understanding where you want to go. I like how we pretty much putting everything forward to build upon. from the very first moment of this conversation, which is we need to find our peace. We
Yes.
need to find it. And sometimes finding our peace, meaning we might have to change environments. Like you said with the palm trees you have,
Yes.
they like the warm weather. You're not
Yes.
gonna do well if you move up to like Connecticut or something like that. And you got a high bill because you want to keep your palm trees.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. The environment matters. And I hope everyone who's listening says, I need to make sure I'm in the best environment. And I've had to let go of friends because I'm going there here and they're here. And there's no hard feelings. It's you they're pulling me down. And you have to realize you come first. And that's where the mindset, Stoicism talks a lot about it in wisdom, knowing what is in your control and then executing that. You have to really think like if I bring this person in, they want to go out and have beers on a Wednesday night. I got to get up early Thursday because I got really important plans, or they just want to watch a football game today. I want to do some healthy stuff off the couch. I want to run or go to the gym. So those are little tiny decisions you make where they have profound impacts on your life. And that's where you need to find the right community. Once you find them, that's how your life starts to change.
Yeah. So how did you find that power of no then? Because like you said, we got to find those boundaries. But how do we practice that?
Well, that's very, very profound. I put it in my reminders on my phone. It reminds me every day. You have to say no. You have to say no. And that means not checking the market. That means at certain times. That means not taking calls at certain times. The power to build your calendar. That is in work. I've built my calendar because that reveals your truth of who you are. So when I'm in a meeting, I'm not doing other things. When I'm doing trading, I'm not taking calls. So everything is built around that. And then when I get to my day ends earlier than most because I'm mentally tired. And I tell people this, when you say I'm done for the day, don't take calls because you have what's called decision fatigue and you're not at your best. And you have to have the mental fortitude to put that and say, I will put this in my calendar tomorrow. So I'm saying no now. And I know a lot of people that just feel like they got to respond right away, but I don't because you're not at your best. It's like, you've done all this stuff all day, you've already ran, and then you're like, you think you could run as well at the end of the day that you did? No, of course not. And that's where you have to organize things. So you're going to do it. And once you get those behaviors and they feel normal, but until you do that, no, it won't feel normal. People say this to me as I train people. You didn't check your emails yet. I'm like, because I check them at 4 and I check them at 10. I can't, I have to say no to all these things. And then I'm very efficient and people get the very best of me because I'm in with them. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not looking around. I'm not sidetracked. You will be better, more efficient, and reach your goals quicker when you say no. That rings every single morning. Say no 25 times today.
I like that one. I
Yeah,
like that.
it is weird. I've never been asked that question before. That is powerful, but
Yeah.
it is what I do. I hear that people say all the time.
So when it comes to, because I noticed you mentioned your father, how has he been impacting your financial journey?
My father has helped me through all of my financial mistakes. Very few people could have that happen. Now, I'm not saying there were a lot, but my father has been there for me. My father is a saver. He's very disciplined. I was not when I was younger. I didn't really start in this field until I was 32. So I've been doing it 21 years. So I've been 21 years in the field. And it took me time to understand that and that's also part of my message is you're not locked into anything. You can change and pivot course whenever you want. My father helped me get a job out of college and stuff like that, but I wasn't happy. And he was okay with me switching careers. So my father has been very helpful for me. And even when we had disagreements, those disagreements, I took them as positives to change who I was because I can't change him.
Right.
Not not that I need to or want to. I'm not saying that as but once you realize you have to be your own person, like my dad's very happy for me now, but he might not have necessarily been happy at the time when I made a career change because you're literally starting over. But my dad has been very impactful and he helped me financially to start my business and stuff like that, which I realize is not something a lot of people get. And I've never had anyone ask that, and I've never ever revealed that before. But I am very lucky and I love him for that. And I tell him that. And he's not somebody that likes emotions. So because he's in the older
Right, right.
generation, I'm like, I'd hug you right now. It's like, you don't need to do that.
You're like, ah, like,
Yeah. But anyway, I think it's important when
yeah,
you listen, sometimes people want to be helped, sometimes they want to be heard, and sometimes they want to be hugged.
right.
Those are my threes. Helped, hugged, or heard.
I like that because to me, the hug could be a verbal hug.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying thank you.
Yes.
And for me, I think a lot of people don't say thank you enough as they like to,
Correct.
even though they want to be heard. Sometimes, like an attaboy can go a long way. And I'm thinking from people who are in leadership who are afraid to even say thank you or hey team, good job. But it's a difference between all right, I'm gonna go back. I'm sorry, because I'm an elementary
No,
educator.
let's do
So
it. Yeah.
one of the things is that in my teaching career, I used to teach, was that we actually had to understand to give thanks and actually say no to an action, not to the person, so that they can understand this is a bad action, not that you're a bad person. And thank you for doing a good job on this activity, not that you're just a good person, if that makes
Correct.
sense.
No, that is important. I think we often don't share that. And that's why I got into a lot of this stuff because I would just say no, but I didn't give them the reasoning behind it. I wasn't saying no to them, I was saying no to the time
Right.
that they wanted to do it, or no to the event they wanted to do, not to them as a person.
Hmm.
And that's oftentimes like, no, that's not something I enjoy anymore. Maybe we can agree on a musical or something like that. I love musicals. I love music. Music makes me happy. And I love the violin, which is odd, but yes. And as you change, you're not saying no to the person. And I think that's important. And you can acknowledge, I appreciate being asked because it is nice. Someone's thinking of you,
Right.
and you should acknowledge that. That's really a major part of having a strong community. Because a lot of times people don't say thank you, and you can build resentment from that.
Yeah, and it's sad because even I think it wasn't Meryl Streep. It was somebody that I saw on I think on Instagram. I was just flying through Instagram and doom scrolling.
Yeah, we all do it.
Yeah, it was a celebrity that felt so bad because her mother resented her, saying like, "Hey, you did not thank me when you got your award 30 years ago." But when they looked at the recording, she actually did thank her mom. Her mom didn't hear it. And so all of
Ah,
these years, she felt so bad that she did not thank her mom. But now that the recording came out to show that she actually did, it's almost like, wow, like these emotions, all they had to do was just go back and look at the tapes.
yeah,
And I think that's something that we miss in finances is to really look back at like, hey, you did your best you could with what you had at the time, and it's okay. Like you can still change and shift from that perspective.
it's resiliency to one, look at yourself, and then you got to dig deep, and then go back and say, yeah, I made mistakes. I did these things. I apologize for them, and or, to yourself. And but you change because now you're doing the growth steps. You're investing 10% of your income. You're putting money into a Roth now. You're not taking the high risk stuff. You're using indexes. You're working with an advisor. You're selecting some stocks that align with your personal goals and also some that you think could grow over time. And you're starting, and then you start to really build like a mental fortitude and strategy, because we all need strategies in life. We need to figure out how we're going to take things. And I handle the finance side. Just like when I'm going out to a wave, if I see the size of it, I got to figure out what is the channel to get out so that I don't hit 10 waves in a row. Or learning how to duck dive, which is really fun. You see people when we dive under,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah. That's what
know,
it's called. Okay.
because until you learn that or you have too big a board, you get hit hard and it's like psh, psh, it's like, why would I ever do that? And so these are the types of things, like you said, is going back and looking at your past may be important and resolving those issues, but also saying, I'm not that person anymore, apologize, or work towards what your goals are in the future. That's a really good thing, because people do have resentment. And you don't want to resent yourself for not making decisions, because let's say I'm 10 years behind on where I should have started. That's okay, but I'm happy now.
And because it's bringing up so many, I like this conversation as I'm going through my journey now. I get to
Mm-hmm.
pull back on more things that I've came across from different conversations. Is that the comparison to somebody else's lifestyle? Like you look at some of these celebrities who are like younger than you are, but making all this money,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't know that backstory until they write a memoir of like how their parents were beating them or the other things that's happening from the producers or executives that were part of their journey, the things that they had to go through to get to where they are today. And that's the reason why I was asking about your story, is because it's like those are sacrifices that you've made to get to where you are today. And is somebody else willing to make those same sacrifices? So that comparison piece, like we were talking about earlier, it's just the really taking the moment to understand your life and not looking at others. So how can people put their blinders up to kind of ignore that?
I bring a lot of this back to the psychology and the stoicism. You need to have something to keep you focused. Some people naturally are born that way, but I think we all need to train. It's like running or fitness. You may have ran in the past, but that doesn't mean your cardio is good 20 years later. And the mental journey is requiring you to do this every day. And you might get better at it, but I still dedicate 40 minutes a day to it. I'm better at it and I can put more in there. But the second you stop running, so to speak, or working out or eating healthy, that those behaviors are done. So this is a lifelong habit to doing, to living this way. And I think that's why you have to write down your goals and stick to it. But we all go on vacation, we eat too much, or we have other things come up. But realistically, you have to follow some type of pattern for a long period of time. And with investing, or really the attitude stems, everything can be, I say, with stoicism or psychology. If you see a psychologist or a therapist, they can also help you do that. You need to work with somebody to really build some emotional intelligence across the board. I think I'm answering your question, but that's kind of, those are where I'd start. Is the emotional intelligence is based on my stoicism and psychology that I've studied for that.
Nice. So I'm gonna do a quick round of questions because obviously it's a financial show,
Hmm.
and I know we've been dabbling into it because I want to go to the third segment and then the final four.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I just wanted to do a rapid fire if you don't mind.
It's great. I love it.
Okay, so talk about the sandwich generation. What are the top three questions that somebody should have a conversation with their child?
I think when right now there's a lot of challenges for people for trying to buy a house, they seem expensive. You're seeing people stuck longer with their parents and stuff like that. I think you want to have a financial education. You want parents, and hopefully the parents have some financial education, because when they grew up, they could buy a house easily. They could buy a car. Everything was affordable, and it's not affordable. So we have much bigger hurdles now. And I think trying to get people in the right frame of mind, saying, you need to save no matter what. I know it's going to be harder to do certain things, but with the right attitude, you could be in a better position than if you have the wrong attitude and start saving earlier. I think that's very important. I was able to get my house right before the things went up, and I realized I was lucky with that. So I think kind of just starting, save your money, pay yourself 10%, right off the bat is where it would be. And don't be discouraged by a lot of the challenges we're facing, because I hear a lot of people say, I can't afford a house. They're so expensive, the mortgages. And home ownership is fun to own something, to put your head down. So that's the first thing I always start at with that, is because that's a big goal for almost everybody, home ownership at some point.
Yeah, I like
And
that.
that's where a lot of wealth is tied up. And it seems unattainable for a lot of people sometimes now.
Yeah, but going back to those sacrifices, like, what are
Yes.
you willing to sacrifice to get
Yes,
there?
it
Yeah.
is. And then, of course, one of the other things is parents need to talk about the retirement accounts. Even if you're working, if parents can help you, you can do Roth IRAs. Roth IRAs are a great way where you say, look, we're going to put some money here. And this is where you don't want to gamble with this type of money. You want to use index funds. You can use technology, obviously, or whatever you like, and you can add some stocks. But you want to have them talk to you like these are long term. And if you put this money in at 18 or 19, I know you may be older, but I'm just saying wherever you are in this pitch, you can get money out of the Roth after 5 years. You can take the principal out
Mhm.
without taxes. So I tell people this seems really unattainable right now. But let's say we have the market housing come down by you've been putting money away for 10 years. We could take out 50 grand without any taxes to put down on a house. And granted, obviously I'd like your money to grow, but the house should grow too. And that's so I think the financial education of retirement accounts and the right type of retirement account is very critical. And a lot of people don't really know about the Roth like that. But that is a great thing to do, is you can take the principal out without any issues and still the gains still grow. So I think that's another critical piece for everybody. Because if you put it in a regular IRA and you take it out, you're hit with like 30% taxes,
Right.
and
That's true.
that's that's not good. And then I think really one of the most important things, is really at that young age, is trying to share with them a vision of broadening what they may do. I grew up in a rural community, but at the same time, every weekend I spent it at my grandmother's in the city. So I had like two different, very, like, one, I'm playing by myself. There's no street lights.
Right.
There's dirt roads. I'm running around. I got a goat and a dog, and you know what I mean. And then I go to my grandmother's, and it's 20 kids out in the middle of the street. We're playing football. So I had a really weird balance to that. And regardless of that, and you have these different groups of people, you want to give them insight as to there's things wider than their short little vision. And especially in high school, as you mentioned, that's all they know. And once you get out of high school, and if you go to college or whatever, until you really start to, you want to push them to look at 10 different things, because I didn't know I wanted to be this, but I started to see it clearly when I turned 30. And then I started to get into it, because originally I was like, I'm into math, and I'm quiet. And obviously I'm not quiet now. So, but I naturally did it, but a lot of people need their parents to help them. And I think the parents also need that too. So I think that, and then talking about not only widening your vision financially, emotionally, professionally, but that's also for your friends, because the friends you have, I mean, high school is so small,
Yes.
you remember it. You saw it. What did you teach?
I taught elementary, so I did first grade, third grade, seventh, and eighth.
Okay. Okay. Oh, wow. So yeah, it's, they have so much hope. You want those kids when they're that young to keep that energy. If there's a fourth, I would say keep that joyful energy because you need it and you're going to really need to have it as we get older because life may seem hard at 17 and 18. It can get really hard as you get older because you got a mortgage to pay or bills to pay and stuff like that. So I think talking to them about a vision and to be happy, I think would be a third thing that's very important. I share that with my nieces who are 17 now and are
Mm-hmm.
twins, and because they don't go outside as much and they're on their phones a lot more. It's just a different generation, you know?
Yeah.
And they talk through Snapchat rather than picking up the phone.
Yeah, I'm more of a texter
Yeah.
because I grew up in an era where you didn't have many minutes. So, that you had more text than you had minutes. And I used to hate when people used to leave voice messages because it'll take away a minute or however long that message was. I'm sure you remember those days.
Well, I may be a little older. I had a pager that had an 800 number so I
Oh
could
my
call
gosh.
to check the voicemail.
Right.
But then I needed a quarter to call them. I'd be like, when we come up with codes in the pager so that they could do it. And so I remember that. I was like, wow, I'm cool. They can get me.
Right.
But I
I
do
was,
remember the minutes too. I'm like, don't call me on my phone unless it's important. And
yep.
after 59 seconds, I'm hanging up. People will never
Exactly.
understand that.
No, those
Like,
the
oh, drop
unlimited
call,
minutes,
sorry.
right? Those unlimited minutes at the 7 o'clock. I'm like,
Oh
oh
my,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right.
So you'd be like, all right, can you just call me at 7?
Hmm.
That is funny. That would have been a great time to have the power of no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, we had that
No.
built in. It costs
Yeah,
money.
had that built. So you can do it. See, you could do it. We can all do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is we all have it for certain things. You're right. If we're waiting for a call, we'll not pick up the phone. We'll sit there. And I think that brings it back. I think maybe there's a fifth thing, the power of no, teaching people, be focused, but also keep your vision wide at certain times. And I think books are help you be inside the mind of other people and realize you're not alone in a world where oftentimes we feel alone because we're just seeing TikToks or this and everybody's happy. Reading allows you to really be just engulfed in something. And so I'm a book reader. And when I was young, it would have been the Bernstein Bears or comic
Yep.
books, but now I read actual things. And it once you get good at reading, you actually start to like it more, and I think that's important. So that's a great question. There are some things we really should spread the word on what parents need to explain, and
Hmm.
also for us to learn in that habit as well too.
Yeah.
So
And that's why I like this is the reason why I made the shift for my audience to be more in the sandwich generation is because it's a flow. It's not like, hey, you're set like a Gen Z or Gen X, whatever they want to call these generations.
mhm.
But the sandwich generation, everybody's going to have a kid at some point. If they don't, it's okay. But obviously, you have parents that either you might be their caretaker for, or it may not be your biological parents, but the people who brought you up that you're going to be taken care of eventually. So, how can you actually thrive in that environment and still find yourself without losing yourself through that emotional turmoil? Or, like you say, the wave.
Powerful.
Yeah. So, and that's the reason why I like having these conversations with different people because it broadens my scope. And that's the reason why I like the podcast. It's a cheat code for me to get more information.
It is, and you're pulling out things from me that I have never talked about or shared. But I think one of the most important things in these conversations is that be vulnerable
Mm,
because we're in this world together. We're brothers and sisters, all of us.
yeah.
And once we have the right attitude and you open up, I'm here for you. And we often try to fit into a tribe, but the more broadening of your world and being able to communicate like this over the phone allows us to see there are so many people like us. We just didn't necessarily see them because when we're walking down the street, we were the goth person or we were the skateboarder before it was cool. I was skateboarding when it was a crime. You know what I mean? We were getting chased everywhere.
Right.
Now it's like, oh, of course they're skateboarding and it's a big deal.
Mm,
But it is important to have that perspective. That is very important.
Yeah. So as we go through the third segment here, which is talking about the futures, what areas are you focusing on to improve your own life or career?
My goal right now to improve is writing a book. I
Mm,
want to put the things that have taken my life and have used to transform me. And I think I hear this, and I don't know where I heard it from, but don't have a transactional life, have a transformative life. And
okay.
we have a chance to grow. And you see that like flowers and palm trees continue to grow and get taller and taller and bigger and stronger. That's how we should be in life. And with the book, it's forced me to put down a lot of my words and then reorganize it. I have like a mental palace where I'm like, okay, let me organize this. And I write everything down, and I suggest this to everybody. I would use Evernote or the notes and say Apple Notes. And I've been doing that for about 20 years and writing things down, and I could see my growth. And that's one of the things I like to do is go back and look at what I wrote. I'm like, oh my God, did I write that? I must have written that in crayon. I must, because I look at myself and say, God, how did I communicate? And I think that's important because now I'm saying I can communicate better
Mm,
and I've made growth, and maybe I'm not very good, but I'm vulnerable and I share my vulnerabilities because I think it's important to continue to work on yourself, even if it's slow.
mm,
When you climb upstairs and you go walk up, a mountain, it's slow. You don't run up a mountain because you trip and fall and then you wind up. So life is like that. You're just climbing it slow. And with this book right now, it's forcing me to really look at all the different things that have been in my mind, but then put them in a seamless order. And
mm.
it is challenging. It really is. And it's fun. And I remember yesterday, I'm going through it with the person, and like we've had three drafts already on the outline,
Wow.
and it's hard. How do you fit things? But that is forcing me to grow. And do I have to do it? No. Do I want to do it? Nah, I'm not even sure sometimes when I'm doing it. But here's the one thing that I do know for a fact on this: when you're doing something, it may not be fun, but when you're done, accomplishment feels incredible.
I love
That's
that.
the trick. So I say to myself, I can get through this next hour and a half being on here looking like a fool because I don't know how this stuff works. And then I keep writing back and forth. And I feel like I learned something. And yesterday, after I was done, I was like, oh, my head hurts, but I felt great because we accomplished a much better version of the outline, and then we're going to have a fourth. But I actually felt like the first one was like, oh my, who wrote that? Was that even me? And I think I'm being very vulnerable in it. So that's what I'm doing now because I want to express my difficult journey, being on the spectrum, not being able to read people,
Mhm.
not being vulnerable, not understanding emotions. You're really bringing out a lot of emotions in, and I think that's important because we need to have people give us feedback on our emotions, how we're feeling, and also understand how they're feeling. So at this stage, I'm always pushing myself to grow, and I'm always adding books outside of my normal study. I'm doing the history of the Bible by John
Nice.
Barton, which is kind of neat, and it's just a even though whether I'm not religious, but I like to learn about things and how things occurred. I'm doing the history by Howard Zinn of America, which doesn't teach you the stuff you hear in school. It teaches
Of
you the
course.
actual atrocities that happened. And is it pleasant? Not necessarily. But again, I'm listening to it because I want to have different perspectives of how things occurred. But I will say one of the best books that I've ever listened to in my life is Why Nations Fail. I think, and they won a Nobel laureate last year after it had been out for 12 years because they tell the real truth on what makes nations great. And so these are the types of things that I continue to work on it and push myself so I can share these stories because I do believe we have to go through pain oftentimes, unfortunately, before we get to the pleasure, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's just the way things are in life.
But it's going back to, like you said, you have to have those vulnerable moments to kind of build that resilience because you put it out there. And if you would have kept it to yourself, how can you build that resilience and build your structure if you never put it out there in the first place? And so I commend you for, putting yourself out there. And I just can't wait to read it whenever you fully finalize the end product, because I'm sure it's going to be the bamboo of the book community.
Well, I thank you for that. And vulnerability, once you share, like, I made mistakes, I had negative bank accounts, I didn't, but I worked on myself. And people are like, they appreciate that and they share their vulnerabilities. And that's where you get a real emotional connection. We've all made mistakes, but a lot of times we try to hide them as if we're perfect. That's why I keep this right here on me. If no one can see it, it's a blue morpho butterfly. Blue is not their actual color. Light gets trapped in there off the bones and refracts. So you see beautiful blue on the outside, but this is the inside of it.
Nice.
And that's what people see. So I tell people, and this does catch people's eye, and I explain that to them. And I wound up having a great conversation coming back from Puerto Rico with a woman next to me who is from Arkansas. And her and her, I guess she was tasting out her soon to be daughter-in-law to Puerto Rico for like a vacation with that. And she had just opened up to me and shared so many things because I shared that and how, I had struggles in reading people and doing things. And it was an uncomfortable 4 hour wait on the tarmac. But we really talked and we both left like, wow, that we made a positive connection. We'll never see each other again, but she shared some things with me that I can now share with my clients about how her father had a she had a stepmother that she didn't like essentially, and they didn't do the estate planning. And she wouldn't do it, and she made a mess of everyone's life. And she's like, she hated me from the grave. That's why she did it on purpose. So that reminded me so much of why we have to plan, because planning isn't always just about you either. It's about the people you love. And that we got to the heart of the story. If you love somebody, you do the right thing. And so that's why planning is so. And I have these comments. I'm like, I got to get your estate plan. You care about these people, then you need to do it. And that's the vulnerable nature of having these conversations. So I wound up having a great conversation. I'll never see you again. We opened up to each other, and I felt like I had growth out of that. Just sitting on a plane in a horrible situation. And yeah, that was another layer of bamboo. Now I'm 21 feet.
There you go.
We're growing fast.
Yes, sir. All right. So, is there anything that you want to leave the audience with before we go to the final 4 questions?
I want people to really take time to sit down and get some type of journal on their phone. I know it's easier. You can do paper or journal and start to write down your thoughts. Once you start to do that every day and develop that habit, you'll start to actually just come up with things. And oftentimes you can ask these journals today to come up with a question to ask you. That is the first step in changing everything. That's mental health, financial health, physical health are all tied together. They're all tied together. You might be running well and doing stuff like that, but if you don't have mental health and financial health, it will weigh on your physical health. And that's, I think, the number one thing is journaling. And it'll say, what was your favorite part about college? And now I'm having to think about it. It didn't ask me what college I went to. It was a question. I'm thinking, God, there were so many. And now you know what I mean? That's a better question.
Yeah.
What's the best part of your neighborhood? I didn't ask you where you lived. Right. What transformed you? So it's these little tiny questions that get you to think. So that's what I'd leave it, because it all stems, once you change your attitude changes, you will see the world with the lights on. And that's important.
Right.
And we all battle darkness.
Every day.
Every day, yes.
Every day. So you ready for the final 4?
I am. Let's do it.
All righty. First question. What does wealth mean to you?
Wealth to me, that definition is important. And Socrates talks about that because we all have different definitions for words. Wealth to me means I'm able to not have to have income from anybody else and live a life where my assets maintain my life. I can do my charitable work. I rescued orangutans in Borneo. I can donate to them.
Nice.
I was going to go to Laos this year to help the elephants. So the wealth to me allows me to do things and travel to help animal charities. And then also I went to Honduras to help kids who were orphaned from the drug wars and AIDS there. That's the type wealth gives me the financial freedom to do the things that I want to do because I'm more than work. And I believe we need to give back. And and that gives us the power and the money. There's a thing that I that is crazy, but George Clooney started a what is it, alcohol company, a tequila company.
I think so.
Yeah, and the reason I'm telling you this is he sold it for $1 billion, and his wife is a human rights lawyer, and they were always running around trying to get donations to get help. And he said, once I got that billion, I don't ask for help anymore. I can do the things that I want, and it's unlimited money. That's what wealth is. It's being to do the things you want in life without having someone else determine what you can and can't do. You don't need $1 billion because you're not probably running around saving people's lives in all these other countries like she does. But that's what wealth is to me is complete independence to live the life you want and help the people you care about.
Yep. Just so to kind of like fact check, I guess, to make sure we
Mhm.
getting everything together. I just googled it right quick. It is he co-founded a tequila company, Casamigos. That's what that
Yes.
is. And sold it for $1 billion in 2017. Man, that is wow. And
So, yeah.
it's
Now
just
he didn't have someone give him an agenda to his wife saying, you can help those people, but you can't help these people. Now he has the independence to not have donors tell him. And that's what I mean for ourselves. If I want to help somebody, I'm not taking donations from somebody. I can do it myself. So I can set up stuff like that. Because donors can say, I don't want you to do this. That's what it means to me, where you don't have someone's control over you.
I like that.
Casamigos, yes, $1 billion. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. I was like, I don't even drink Casamigos. I heard about it, but I don't drink it.
Not
Interesting.
a bad payday. So that's why he can do whatever he wants now. And that was one of the problems he mentioned is we do these dinners and they're like, but I don't want you doing this. And that's like my job is to help people.
Yeah.
And to me, that resonates with me. I don't need $1 billion, but I do need the financial independence. And that's what wealth means to me is living the life I want to live. And I'm not somebody that spends a lot of money. I've stayed at hostels with surfers. And when I was in Borneo, I was sleeping on people's porches. I'm 50, I was 51 at the time, sleeping on people's porches. It's 125 degrees out. That's not wealth to me. Wealth to me was being in the journey and knowing, I could afford it and I could make donations and stuff like that.
Man, that's
It was a
awesome.
hot vacation or trip.
I bet. Number two, what was your worst money mistake?
Well, that's an easy one. In 2008, I was on top of the world. I was top in sales at this company with my business partner, and I didn't understand irrational exuberance. I was a young man. My account went up like 164% in 1 year.
Wow.
Crazy. But I didn't really know what I was doing, and that's why I want to share this and I tell people this. And that's why I'm more cautious. In 1 week, without really understanding it, when that Lehman Brothers hedge fund blew up, they had to liquidate everything, and that's what was happening yesterday. There was margin calls
Yep.
on big companies, and then it's like a black hole. It just sucks everything in, and I lost like 80% of my wealth in a week because I didn't understand that it could just happen. And that's what these margins. So the markets when they do that, it's how would I have known that? Now I share that story. It's like This is why you need to have capital on the side. This is why you need to do certain things because you can have. Now, granted, I still maybe I was up 8% after that, but I kind of got a windfall and I didn't understand what was happening globally. Now I understand all that. And that was painful to lose six figures in 5 days. And
Yeah.
I didn't understand it. It took years to make and then was gone in 5 days.
And I'm sure a lot of people are feeling that right now, the way how things going.
Yes. And, when that Dave Portnoy, I don't know what he owns, but I'm sure he probably takes very aggressive stocks. And you have certain stocks down 30, 40, 50% in just a matter of a week or two. And that's where you're not managing your risk and understanding what you're doing. If like I have a lot of people with 30, 35% in cash on the side, even my sister, like I put 25% of her money in cash and I'm not recommending this. I got to be crystal clear. And 25% in Berkshire Hathaway, which is essentially a large cash position. And like, yeah, a bunch of our stocks went down like 40%, but we have all this cash. And to me, she can go shopping. I'll take her shopping and say, what do we want to buy at a discount? Because
Right.
you're getting these margin calls on a company and they have to liquidate. So things just fall down so quick. They'll rebound back, but I want to be able to buy them when those things happen. So I don't time the market. I look for the opportunity. And then when it's opportunity happens, I get the right board and I get the right, and I swim out and paddle and I get on the right waves because I waited patiently for that. That's the mistake people often make is they're always in a rush because they have this group think or this urge to try to make the money back quickly. Don't do that. That is a powerful thing. And I didn't understand. So I was there like, how do I make this back? And there was no way to make it back because Lehman Brothers went under and then Bear Stearns. And like, if you remember, like the world was going under
It
literally at
was.
that time. They were meeting saying, we had Wells Fargo by Washington Mutual, which was the fourth largest bank. So I got Wachovia, which was the third
I
largest bank,
remember
went under.
Wachovia.
Like you're talking literally the biggest banks in the world, and they just disappeared overnight. So again, that was when I got crushed. Now I'm very good at what I do, and I try to share people that you can lose it all very quickly right now, and I would be very, very cautious about what you do.
Okay.
You don't want to start over.
So, well, yeah, to make sure you put some of it in cash. Okay. So, question 3. Is there a book that inspired your journey or changed your perspective?
There is a book written by a wonderful, wonderful writer. It's called The Undoing Project. That was the first time in a book I felt like the person he was writing about, I believe it's Michael Lewis,
It
very
is.
famous author. And I've read that book 9 times.
Wow.
And there was a point where they were talking of it's crazy. It talks about Daniel Kahneman. He was born in Israel. His dad moved over to France to be the top scientist, top chemist for a major beauty company. And it talks about the dichotomy of people where his dad's best friend and the owner of the company was a Nazi, but then his dad was a Jew. And even though he was a Nazi sympathizer, he saved Daniel Kahneman's father from Auschwitz because he was a friend of him. So that's when people say, I have a black friend or I have an Asian friend, whatever. It doesn't mean you're not doing racial stereotypes and stuff like that. It just he had a connection to him and he saved his life, even though he was okay with everybody else. And then, it talks about Kahneman going through all this stuff and then to go to Israel at 20 years of age, become the lead psychologist. And he created a system that everybody uses today for the military psychology. But the journey of Daniel's story in that resonated with me. Like he said, I feel different. I don't feel like other kids. And that's how I felt. And when I joined this social eds group, I met other people that felt that way. And that just tells you we're not alone. We just haven't found our tribe yet. And that allowed me to keep searching for my tribe, which the social edge group with Blake Eastman, he's put this together, and we have these three-way calls or two-way calls, and you start to go, oh my Lord, we're so similar, but we would never connect with each other. So that book led me to this point where Daniel Kahneman wasn't very talkative. His partner, Amos Tversky, was. But after about 20 years, he became talkative and and that's how I felt. So, like deep inside, like if I had an idol, he brought out the best in me because he allowed me heuristics, biases, fallacies, effects, and illusions. And he created behavioral economics and behavioral finance. He is the founder of that. And so that resonates with me. And that has changed my life and made me search for all of the emotions that were hidden because of being who I was.
I'm going to read that book.
Oh, it is when when you read it, Daniel Kahneman essentially is the one that created Moneyball and all that. Everything's based off of him. When you read that, you will say, I can't even believe it. You will be stunned. And there was a point where Daniel Kahneman was picked up by a Nazi soldier and he was 10 years old. And he thought he was dead. He had the mark on him. The guy knew he was a Nazi or knew he was Jewish and he thought he was dead. He picks him up, gives him candy, gives him money, and then shows a picture to Daniel of his son. And Daniel looked like his son. And because he looked like his son, he let him go.
Wow.
And that's where he was like, that's confusing because he's killing all these people. What happened to his, but because he looked like his son, he gave him candy and money. And he's like, it just made me so confused. And that's how we all are. We're all confused and complex. And once you start to realize that, you can dig deeper into yourself. Books are important. And Why Nations Fail and The Undoing Project are two of the most powerful books because they're the seeds of the plants that grow in our mind.
Yeah. Back
And
to the
then
plants. Like I love it.
yeah, no, I love it too because you're right. It because you can envision the plants, your mind growing, and that's what's happening.
Number 4.
Okay.
What is your favorite dish to make?
I'm not a huge cooker. Um, but when I do, I eat salads. I pretty much I cook chicken or salmon and I put it on salad and I always get the romaine. I put some of the Romano cheese and croutons. And believe it or not, I eat it plain because if you cook the chicken, I know everyone thinks I'm crazy.
Okay.
But when the salmon's cooked right, my stepfather does this for me all the time. He cooks for me when I come over, and he's going to do it today. But he does it for me, and I say no dressing because the way if you cook things right and you put some seasoning on the salmon, it drips on everything and it adds moisture, and then you're actually tasting the salmon in the salad. So that's actually a salmon salad is my favorite. That's absolute like salmon on just kind of plain stuff with a little cheese, a little Romano. Because if you don't put dressing on it, you actually taste the food.
I
And
like that.
salmon cooked well, or chicken cooked well, but not dry chicken, but juicy, it's flavorful. And you never taste it with the dressing. And when you're sitting there eating it and it's kind of the oils from it are all in it, you're getting oil in your salad. You're just getting it from the salmon. And salmon is just a phenomenal. So that's what I look forward to every week. And he makes it for me and I get this giant plate and I feel like a king. I'm like, thank you so much. I feel like I'm king.
Right.
That's my favorite dish, the salmon salad.
I like that. Well, this is the last question of the show. And man, I feel like I could talk to you for hours here. Even though it's only been like an hour and a half, but it's okay though. Which is, where could people find out more about you?
You have to Google me. I'm not technically allowed to say the firm I'm affiliated with. I'm Will R. Young. If you want, I do financial planning. I've been in this business for 21 years. It's personal with me. or my team, if you work with me or someone on my team, you have a personal relationship with someone who cares about you. We become integrated with your family. You know, I've seen kids grow up, get to adulthood and help them. That is one of the greatest things, is being connected with people for 20 years and seeing their kids grow up and helping their kids and having that relationship. It's not transactional. I'm fee-based advisor, and they know that, and we're growing together. And if just Google me, Will R. Young, or DuckDuckGo or ChatGPT, it'll pull me up. And the number one thing I want to do with everybody is come up with a financial plan. I want to figure out your goals, write your goals so you have a vision. And it's okay to change it, and especially if you had it. One of the mistakes in that when you're looking for me is I'm going to make sure that you never feel embarrassed by whatever your goals are, and share those goals. And, you know, so look for me. You can find me quite easily. I'll pull up. I got some press releases coming out on behavioral psychology and finance, and my website's willryoung.com.
Awesome. And
Thank you.
well, thank you so much for your time. This has been a pleasure. And the person that's listening to this, if you actually found this important and found anything that you feel as though has been an impact to your life, I want you to go ahead on and subscribe to the show if you're new here. And if you're not new here and you found this information valuable to somebody else in their journey and just don't know where to go, I think this will be a great episode to start them off with so that they can figure out their lives, figure out themselves while they're in a place of darkness with their finances right now. So thank you so much for listening, and y'all have a good day.
Thank you.